Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today are life coaches Cindy Chavez and Jackie Gates. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And we're just today and kind of chatting about the upcoming holidays and the things that we're doing to get ready for them and what's happening in the new year. We got new plans coming, all kinds of fun stuff going on. So yeah, this is a great time of year. It's a time of year to kind of remember where we've been and celebrate where we are, think about where we're going. But we also want to take a moment to think about a lot of people in the world who are struggling. This can be a very difficult time of year for a lot of people. Sometimes it has to do with difficult family situations. Sometimes it has to do with having no family situation at all. Some people, it has to do with they have a difficult situation with a mate, or they don't even have a mate and they want one. I mean, there's a whole range of possibilities, but the simple fact is a lot of people struggle through the holidays. So we wanted to dedicate this show, like we often do every year, to people who struggle in the holidays. And I know you guys are thinking about them. You're coaches, so you deal with people on a regular basis with the struggles and trials and tribulations that they go through. But I guess I just want to start first off by asking you guys, in the midst of all that, how do you keep yourselves up? Because you have to be in a good space, right? I mean, Cindy, you have to be in a great space as a coach in order to help somebody else. Otherwise, you really can't help them.
Well, I want to kind of I want to kind of make sure that we understand that coaches aren't always in a great place because we're human. And so, if I had to always be in a great place to help a client, then that would be really tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so maybe I set the bar a little high. Okay.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's important anyway for me that helps me, especially during a time when holiday spirit and cheer and happiness and all of that is sort of expected, like Valentine's Day. Single people often hate Valentine's Day, right? I mean, I know people that hate it with passion, or have heard people post things where they really hate it. They hate that holiday. Or the other common holidays that people celebrate where we have this ideal in our mind that society puts there of everything being perfection. The decorations are perfect and we're all happy and all the bills are paid and we have enough of everything or more than enough of everything and lots of people that love us that are showering us with gifts. And that's an ideal, and there's always an ideal, and then there's reality. And
I call that the Norman Rockwell vision.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that helps me is to remember that that's just the ideal, and that when things aren't ideal, it doesn't mean anything about me. That's the thing that gets people really down, is they think that whatever the situation is means something. They make it mean something about them, like they're not good enough, or they're not doing enough, or they've made a mistake and things aren't perfect, and that's just not the truth. That's just a story that we tell ourselves, and it's compounded by, I think, by social media and the idea that we all want to look our best. I mean, look, we do this video live stream, Jackie and I, and Walt, we all show up. Look, we have our teeth brushed, and Jackie and I have our lashes done, right? I mean, of course we want to look our best. And that happens with social media, where it's really important that what we post looks good. And so that compounds. I mean, science has shown this, right? The studies they're doing now with that the more hours people spend on social media, and I'm not against social media, but the more time we spend there, the higher is the probability that we will suffer from depression. So in a time when we're already feeling like things need to be a certain way, and then we look at the world through the lens of social media, and it seems like the world really is that way for everyone but us, right? We see all the beautiful lights and the beautiful stories. And I think it's super important to realize that we're all human. We all have a gap between the ideal and reality. and you're going to get through it. And if things are super hard, it's really important to reach out to somebody, for support, for emotional support, and that's something that used to be and sometimes still is really hard for me. And I realized this, 20 years ago when my marriage was ending. I I realized at one point, I thought to myself, okay, Cindy, you need to reach out. You need to reach out to your family, to friends, people that love you, because they're all there and you're not reaching out to anyone. And that's what family and friends are for. And so I started reaching out to a few people and just saying, I just need some love. I just need some support. I just need to. And everyone was so supportive. I mean, it was amazing. And I felt so cared for. But, if you just pretend that nothing's wrong and just stay depressed or stay worried or stay anxious, then you might not get the support you need. So,
Interesting. You mentioned Norman Rockwell, by the way, because I did a little research on him recently, and it turns out what he painted was not anything like his life at all. He actually had a rather
No.
challenging life.
so it was like
Mhm.
early Facebook.
Yeah.
It was early
Yeah.
Facebook. That's right.
It's we share the highlight reels. We don't share the bloopers, and we don't share the outtakes, and we don't share the sort of the we don't even sometimes even record the non-perfect stuff, right? The non-highlighty stuff.
Right.
And with as much social media as there is now, I think the tendency is to believe all the highlight reels are the eternal thing, like that's 24 hours a day, instead of just a snippet that was good in that minute, right? And then, so when somebody posts, we tend to think that is their whole life rather than a highlight reel. And when they don't post, we assume they're living a highlight reel. We don't assume that it's less than spectacular, right? And so there's this, our brain will always offer this opinion that it has of other people's lives, and we have to have that questioned. And then I think that we as humans believe our brains way too much. And therefore, a really cool thing, like Cindy said, is to reach out. If you are seeing your life in a particularly sad making way, or it feels like you believe, maybe you're not questioning that you're believing everything on Facebook, but you're feeling a certain way when you've been on Facebook for a while, check in with somebody who knows you or who can accurately reflect, because a lot of the time your brain will happily bounce past all the good things that are happening in your life and focus in and pick at that one part that isn't going so well, right? So
Exactly.
you could, for example, be on your own for Christmas, but you are loved at work, or you are appreciated by your clients, or you've actually you got through the year, or whatever it is. There are things that you can literally turn your perspective, turn your focus, and it will help. But often, and I say this from myself as well, because coaches have coaches for this very reason, it's so hard to turn our metaphorical chin, and if you're listening, you can't see me, but it's like I'm actually turning your head, like turn your face, look at something differently, because it's hard to do that when you're in it. And it's hard to believe it when your brain has fixated on an opinion that it's formed. And I always call this an opinion because, we all live in our own construction. We all live in our own opinion of reality. So the idea here of changing an opinion often takes an outside view. In my coaching, I use the analogy of I don't know if I've mentioned it, but of buying a ticket to see a ballet. And if you sit in the orchestra level, the curtain goes up and you see feet, which is lovely for the ballettermains who love like footwork and point and all this kind of thing. You see feet, you see the underside of the tutus often, and you'll be able to see into the orchestra pit, which my musical husband loves, and you'll be able to see it fairly close up of the expressions, right? But if you bought a ticket for that same production and went up and sat in the balcony and looked down on the performance, now the tutus look like flowers. Now you see the shapes that the choreographer has created within the corps de ballet. Now you see a very different experience of what is in fact the same show. So this is what getting an outside view can do for you. This is what we as coaches do, but this is also what a very good friend who's going to call you on your BS, right? Or sometimes you need a hug followed by a smack about the head and then another hug. It is because it's so hard to get your brain out of its glass highway of a neural pathway, right? So this is how if you're feeling particularly miserable over Christmas, my first thought is stay off social media or stay away from the people who do only the highlight reel. Or when you go onto social media, realize that this is the highlight reel and you're not living the highlight reel is because neither are they, actually, right? And then call in a metaphorical mirror. Call in somebody who will show you at least one or two good things about your life. Because if you go looking for them, you will find them. And once you find them, you'll find more. But it's that busting of inertia. And momentum always causes friction. Remember that, it's physics, right? Momentum will cause friction, which means that your brain is going to hate this idea. And that's fine. Yeah. Just try it. Just go and find something. And, you can spout as many affirmations as you want. But if after every one your brain goes, yeah, liar. Yeah, that's not true. Then go and find a mirror who will help you find something that you can believe in and you can focus on, and you will get more of that.
Jackie, this reminds me of, I think it was when I was in coaching school. I know it was a long time ago, but there was some assignment that was given. And we were supposed to reach out to, I don't know, 3 people, 5 people, friends, family, somebody. And we were supposed to ask them to list, I think it was like 5 things about us, right? So it was reaching out and saying, hey, Jackie, I have an assignment and I need to ask you to tell me 5 things you see about me that inspire you, or that, 5 great things you see about me, or 5 strengths that I have, or something. And everyone was sort of embarrassed to do it, right? It's like, so everyone was sure to say, my coaching school is making me do this assignment, right? I have to email
Yes.
5 people and ask them.
Because heaven forbid I would ask you myself.
Right. So what's funny though is I was thinking about this the whole time you were talking about reaching out and asking, people to say, what do you see good that's happening in my life? And I kept thinking about this assignment, and now I just realized the connection is that what we were talking about before is the way we will make our situation mean something about us, right? And that's why we're really feeling down, is because we feel like we're not worthy of a great holiday or of love or whatever it is, or we did something wrong or something's not right. We have this something is wrong, because if it was right, everything would be perfect, which we know isn't true. But we were all of us, we were shocked at the replies that we got. And people listed, I know personally, I had people reflect back to me qualities that they saw in me that like blew my mind, because it was like, wow, this is what you see in me, right? And it was wonderful. And I think that that's even an exercise that would be so helpful, because it bypasses you thinking that your holiday's not perfect because something's wrong with you, or you've done something wrong, or something's not right. It's like, no, you are, things feel like this because that's part of the human experience, not because something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
part of the reaching out can even be that. It's like, I don't know, tell me something good. Tell me something you see in me that, you know, that tells you that I'm worthwhile as a person or a friend. You'll be surprised at the reflections that you get from people, because usually, you know, we see other people, we hold other people in higher esteem than we hold ourselves. And that's part of the work that I know Jackie and I both do with clients, is the self-love piece, right? It's like helping people have a great love for themselves, because that will change your whole world. And so that piece fits in here, right?
Yeah. And it's a fun thing to play with when you ask people how they see you. How do you see me? You know, what do you, not what do you think of me, but it's like, what do you see when you see me? But it's also it can be such a shift in your own perspective. It's like, for if to use my ballet analogy, if your life is the ballet, then they kind of take you up to the balcony seat and they show you how they see, because they aren't in it, they aren't on stage, they see it from a very different perspective. And this is what coaches do. And I did want to tap into something you said, Walt. Often we often get this thing that if we're coaches, our lives must be perfect. And new coaches, if there are any new coaches out there, please don't believe this, because otherwise you'll never be a coach, because your life is never perfect. And there's a lovely, what's lovely? It's not a lovely analogy. If you were a nurse, right, and you were driving and you saw an accident or you saw somebody fall, it wouldn't matter what mood you were in or what was going on in your life. You would stop and help, because that's what you do. Teachers, anybody who have, you know, we show up for work, and that sounds awful when we put it in those kind of terms, but we show up for work. Yes, we have tools that make it easier. Yes, we have some flexibility when we work for ourselves, but at the same time, we show up because we're there to help the person that's opposite us. But what I will say is that invariably, they will be going through something that is somewhat similar to, because outsides are a reflection of your insides. So it may not be exactly the same, but your clients will bring you something similar to what you've just been through or are going through. And also, there's nothing like helping somebody else to have you hearing how you can help yourself. Because if you go and try and cheer somebody up and you're feeling kind of like crap anyway, you will hear yourself saying all these things and your brain's going, hey, maybe we could try that, you know, because it sounds super smart when you say it for somebody else, right? And it is that. It is exactly that. We become our own source of support, basically. And so all of these things is what I want to tap back into, is that one of the most debilitating feelings as a human is being alone. Not by yourself, because we can choose to be by ourselves. Both Cindy and I are basically hermits at heart. But so there's a different, but feeling alone, that disconnection is an enormously heavy weight to bear. And so if that's you and you're listening and you're feeling alone, that is the time, now is the time to find out that you're not. Because I promise you, you aren't as alone as you feel. Your brain has just made you believe that for this minute. And it just may need just the slightest tweak of your mirror, the way you see your life, to notice where you are appreciated and where you are not alone. And we are on an LOA show. We know that where our attention goes, energy flows. So focus on where you are connected. Focus on who actually looks forward to you showing up in a day. even if that's a cat or a dog or the birds outside because you feed them on the balcony. It doesn't matter. You are not alone. Get somebody who can help you see that, and in that connection, you will help shift your perspective.
This is good. One of the thoughts that comes to my mind, and I'm curious to know how you guys think about this in the context of what we're talking about here, is when I was about 50, about the time I turned age 50, it was about the first time that I encountered the idea that, well, that I guess I kind of a year or two before that, but I encountered the idea that thoughts become things, that what I focus my attention on becomes my reality. And within a very short time after that, I encountered an idea that when I first ran into it, I didn't believe it. I've since learned to believe it, but I didn't believe it at the time. And that idea was I get to choose what my response is to any given situation, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, and this is the part that blew my mind. It meant that, and at this time it was particularly apropos because I was quite depressed at that time. Even if I'm depressed, even if I'm feeling like the world is against me, I can choose a different response. Now, I was not in any place at all where I could tell you how to do that because I couldn't do it. I had not learned the skill yet. And in fact, I've dedicated quite a bit of time since then to learning that skill because it's a potent skill.
Mm-hmm.
But I mentioned this because it was so mind-blowing to me. The idea that when it was proposed to me, I thought it was BS. I thought it was nonsense the first time I heard it. But then I considered the source, Abraham Hicks. I said, well, maybe I should listen. So I did listen. But it was just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, all of our emotions are directed by our environment, by what happens to us. Something happens that's sad, we're sad. That's just the way it's going to be. Well, no, apparently not. And I mean, to this day, I've done a lot of work on myself to be able to make those kinds of shifts. But to this day, that still is amazing to me. We can actually learn to shift our perspective in a way that changes the way we respond to a situation.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, if anybody who's read Eli Wiesel's book, I mean, if you can do that in a concentration camp, yeah, we can do it pretty much anytime. If it's available to one, it's available. I don't want to say it's available to all, but it is a skill we can learn.
Yes.
And that moment of pausing between reaction and response, we are always going to have reactions, and we need them. You reach out towards a fire and you pull your hand away. Yeah, that's a reaction. We need those. But responses are learned, and we can change them. We can, and I know this because on stage, if I am thoroughly immersed in being in character, playing that role, when the scenery falls down, I respond in that role. I do not respond as Jacqueline Gates, the actress. I respond as the character I'm playing. And yes, it takes training, and it takes immersion, and it takes, in real life, it takes a lot of deciding who you want to be, what your identity is, because your behavior is is part of your identity. But there is that nonetheless, there's always that nanosecond reaction, but then you can choose to pause and respond instead.
One of the tools that I've used before in that situation is like take the word and. And for instance, the first time I thought of this, I was in a hurry. I was trying to get out of the house to go somewhere, and I was cleaning up quickly, and I accidentally, on my way to the trash can, spilled a container of coffee grounds that were wet all over the place instead of into the trash can where they were supposed to go. And so, of course, I had a reaction, right? I had this is so frustrating. But I also realized that because that happened, I was going to have to quickly mop up the floor. And hey, I was going to have a freshly mopped floor. I wouldn't have to do it later. So I remember saying out loud, "Oh, I'm so frustrated. And looks like I'm going to have a freshly mopped floor." And then I burst out laughing because it was like, kind of like what Jackie just said, the response that I chose, because I didn't want to feel angry and frustrated and, you know, like I was blowing it. The response that I chose came that nanosecond, you know, after my reaction of, I can't believe this is happening. Like, not today. Well, and I'm also going to have a beautiful floor and I won't have to worry about that later. And so I kind of had like a light bulb moment over that and started using it anytime I had something where I had a reaction to it. Now that may be a kind of trite, you know, episode that I had, and I don't know that you could apply it to anything, but I actually think you could if you were intentional about it. You know, I'm so sad that I'm alone this holiday, and I also get to watch that movie that no one else ever wants to watch, and I want to watch, right? You know, I mean, there can be, it's like choosing some kind of upside to it, because we know that everything has a light and a shadow. Everything has an upside to it. If we look for it, there will be an upside to it. So I think that's an important, like Walt said, it can take a long time to learn skills like that, but they're so worth it. So try it, you know, just give it a shot.
And you don't have to look for an upside even. You can just get to neutral. Neutral can be good.
Yes.
It's like, you know, okay, this sucks, but it could both be worse and it could be better. So here I am. Right. You know, it's such an interesting, I think we give ourselves, in the depths of a reaction, it's hard to choose a response, but it gets easier with practice. And, you know, and that's another thing that coaching can help with, and your mirrors, your metaphorical mirrors, somebody who'll say, hey, you're doing that thing again. I do it with my mother. I don't coach her, but my mother's default reaction after being a war baby and all the stuff she's gone through in her life is that she worst case scenarios. So you offer her anything, and she has the entire run of events to a global disaster mapped out in a nanosecond. It's just, it is impressive.
We call that catastrophizing.
Yes, right. And so I'll say to her, okay, so you got that planned. Now let's plan the happy, let's plan how we'd like it to go, you know, because it's just, but if she stays there, then she starts to prepare, and then you're pre-paving what you don't want, right? So it's like, so yes, that's legit. That's totally an option. It could happen. Let's see what else we can plan to happen. What else might be true about this, right? And that question is, what else might be true about this? So yes, you're alone at Christmas. What else might be true? Well, I do have a home to be alone in, so that's good. So that means I don't, you know, I could decorate it. I could leave up my Halloween decorations for the next year if I want to. I have a friend who is particularly in love with Christmas trees. She bought herself a white Christmas tree because the guy she broke up from didn't like those. So she got a white Christmas tree the first time. And then she loved it so much, she just put pink decorations on for Valentine's Day. And then she covered it in Easter eggs, and it's still up this year. So, you know, she's left it up because she loves it. And because she lives alone, this is what's true. She gets to decorate how the hell she pleases. And so there are these things. You don't have to look. You can go for what else might be true, which may help. And really anything that gets you out of the fixation, gets your brain out of the fixation on what's wrong, will be helpful.
By the way, the sound of that car driving away, that was the guy who didn't like the white Christmas tree. So we're saying goodbye to him as he's
the other thing is that many people who struggle with the holidays have a history of struggling with the holidays.
Yes.
Right? Like, this isn't your first rodeo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I understand those feelings. It's like, oh, it's like, I know this isn't even real. Like, this is because of society pressure and social media and all of this. So another question that's really powerful is like, okay, once these are over, right? Once these holidays are over, what do I want things to be like then? Like, start looking at that. Like, what, you know, what do I really want things to be like after this passes? It's sort of like when you get a migraine or a head cold, right? It's like, oh, like I'm definitely not going to go out and do any big partying now with this head cold I have. But when it's over with, what am I going to get to once it's over with? You know, because you've many times probably had this situation before. And sometimes even that can be really eye-opening, is realizing that there's a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
That, oh, wait a minute. Like I feel like this every time this time of year rolls around. And what can I do to change that? Because the first thing that causes a pattern to break is recognizing that there's a pattern.
Yeah.
And we want to interrupt the pattern. I mean, that's what a lot of what we do in coaching is pattern interrupts, is recognizing that, you know, the pattern can stop, it can break, it can dissolve, and we can create things that work better for us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you talk about, I had to laugh because just tapping into what you said, I have a booster shot for my vaccine scheduled for the 31st of December, right? I'm finally able to get one. And I felt like death after my last 2 shots. So I was saying, this is not how I want to start the new year, but it's only going to get better, right? I know that by the 3rd or the 4th of January, I'm going to feel fabulous. And so yeah, it is the pattern interrupt. Do what you can with what you have to get yourself looking at it differently, because then
who knows? You might even surprise yourself next time.
Pardon?
Yeah. I mean, when you get the vaccine this time, the booster shot, you may not have that reaction. Maybe you'll actually come through with the vaccine reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I also might just milk it for all it's worth and spend my entire day on the couch and do absolutely nothing. So, yes. Don't you dare rob me of my opportunity.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I love it.
Yeah, you know, all these possibilities are true. So, but it's kind of a fun thing, because I was thinking about that. It's like, geez, what a way to start the new year. And it's like, yeah, but it's only going to get better. So
that means, you know, I'm going to clear my calendar for 5 days.
That's right.
Yeah, I like
when you were talking about feeling depressed, when you're talking about feeling depressed and not going for something high, just going for something neutral, it reminds me where I was when I was in that depressed state. Neutral was even too far away. I was going for irritable. I figured that was a step upward, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And it was.
Like that. It's just like, yeah, you know, whatever it looks like progress. We can't. The quantum leaps are delicious, but they are overrated. A little tiny shift can change your entire trajectory.
Well, it's important to remember
just
that.
Ask anybody who plays golf. An eighth of an inch of a change in the head of your golf club will change whether you hit the clubhouse or actually hit the fairway. So, yeah.
So true.
It makes an enormous difference.
That very lowest of energy is always that feeling like a victim, like we don't have power, we don't have control, things are happening to us, we don't like what's happening to us. And the level up from that is actually conflict energy. It's okay, I'm, instead of moping and being like things are so bad, there's nothing I can do about it, the next level up is I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going to change this, right? And that's not a great, mad as hell isn't a great energy level to be in all the time. I don't want to live there, but you know what? It's a step up.
It is.
Despair, right? So, yeah. So sometimes you're right. Well, that's a really good analogy. Is that sometimes it's just working your way up, and it may be another emotion that's not feeling too great either, but you know what? It feels a little bit better.
It's almost like there's some justice in it. Like, oh, well, hey, I have reason to feel irritable, but I feel better. Now, something else that also occurs to me, we've been referring to people who are alone for Christmas, but that's not the only kind of depression issue or feeling down issue during the holidays, of course. The other kind is tied to being with family you really don't want to be with. Uncle Henry comes over, and we all know how Uncle Henry is whenever he comes over for Christmas, that kind of thing. That can be a challenge as well. How do we deal with those? I suspect the answer is pretty much the same, but nevertheless, we got to bring it up.
I heard someone questioning whether all the people that were deciding to stay home from holiday things were just using Omicron as an excuse, right? It's like, no, I don't think that's the case. But yeah, I mean, that's something that goes back forever. It's like, it's not a new thing for people to be, uncomfortable going to family events with family that they either don't get along with, that their politics are different, that, there's been forever, right? I remember when I was a kid hearing people say, don't talk about money, sex, politics, or religion, because all of those are going to get you in trouble. It's like, what is there to talk about, right?
The weather. You spend 4 hours discussing the weather.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, that can be difficult. I think just knowing that there are so many, and I think social media has done this. Like, you can go on social media, on Twitter or somewhere, and hear other people all talking about the same thing. Like you just said, Walt, right? You had like a little vignette. It's like, oh, Uncle so-and-so is coming and he's always just a pain to be around. I think the realization was that, like, almost every family has these situations. It's like, you're not the only one. So, how long is the duration of this thing that you have to be at? Is it a couple of hours? I've used this expression before. A friend, one of my best friends, that they flip houses. So they live in them while they do them. So they'll move into a house and then completely gut a bathroom or a kitchen or whatever. And she always says, well, it's only going to be for a couple of weeks. I can do anything for 2 weeks. So I can live without a kitchen sink for 2 weeks. I don't want to do it forever, but for 2 weeks. So, how can you deal with it for 2 hours? And what can you bring to the party, right? What can you bring? One time, I remember going somewhere with somebody else's family when I was about 20. And it was my first realization of, I'm not the only one that's had a family gathering where there was either a fight or, people were upset about something, or, it happens to other people too. And I remember we just made this decision. Okay, we're just going to go. And if we're uncomfortable, we're just going to get up. We're going to kiss and hug everybody and say, we got to run. Love
you. Nice strategy. I like that one.
And it's just like, this taps back into the beginning of our conversation, that Uncle Henry actually might be the perfect opportunity to choose to respond rather than react.
Yes.
So, and you can prepave that. If he starts waffling on about, have I told you the story? And everybody goes, yes, you have. And then he sits and grumps for the next hour and a half. Maybe this time to say, do you have maybe we'll listen to the story, or maybe we'll say, yes, you have. And we thought it was amazing the first time we heard it, or whatever it is. It's these things. I mean, I know for myself, I tell the same story over and over again because my short-term memory is like 1/8 of an inch long. And so it is a case of, tell me if I've said this before, and people will say, and then I choose not to feel rejected by it. But it is a thing that we can choose how we respond. And like Cindy, you said, you choose not to get into the fight. You choose to kiss and hug and say, we're going to leave, right? These are the choices that we can make in advance, especially if it's something that comes up pretty much every year. And my daughter is a master at navigating tricky bits of conversation, and she'll do that and say, that's a really heavy topic for right now. Let's talk about something else. How are you doing? It's like, this is the Christmas table. Let's not do politics today.
Let's go on to.
Yeah, let's just do this. And she does it so naturally. I was watching her in one of our gatherings and thinking, gosh, that is such a skill. And it's just like saying, we love you. And this is not the time we want to have that conversation, because we all know how it goes. Yeah. And they'll go, yes. And then you go, okay, so how about, have you seen that latest movie or whatever it is, right? And these are the things you can discuss. So, we can choose a response that is different to the usual reaction.
But Jackie, I love what you said there, where you said, this is kind of a heavy topic and we're celebrating this holiday. And I really want to know how you are.
Yes.
Right? Like, I really want to talk about how you're doing. Because the whole idea of us getting together with family is to show that we love each other, right? Like, we're family, we have differences, but we're gathering together because we care about each other to whatever degree, right? We're here because we care. So to say, but I really want to ask how you are. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's your job been like lately? How do you, like, that is a beautiful, beautiful segue out of a conversation you don't want to have and into showing care for someone. I love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It makes an enormous difference. And it doesn't matter how much of a Grinch somebody is. If you point the attention back at them, they will come out of it. They will. People like to be recognized, and people need to be acknowledged where they are as they are. And it makes an enormous difference. And something as simple as just recognizing that somebody brought all the dishes to the kitchen can change how they feel about the family, dynamic at the table. And I say that because I remember getting into a fight with my brother and being sent to the kitchen, and I decided to pick up some plates and take them with me. And my mother went, "That was really nice of you. I appreciated it." And I was like, oh, so you don't hate me for hating my brother in this moment, which I did. But it's like, oh, okay, yes, that was fine. And it just dissolves it all and brings us back to what really matters, which is the fact that, we actually do love each other.
I love what you guys are talking about here, because as I was thinking about it, the example that I gave earlier, the Uncle Henry, I actually, for a brief time, played the role of Uncle Henry over the weekend. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's what I was doing. And the way it worked out it was with my nephew. My nephew he's very politically motivated, very left wing, pro labor. He's a Bernie Sanders type liberal. And as far as he's concerned, everybody else in the Democratic Party, let alone the Republicans, we won't even go there. But everybody else in the Democratic Party is a terrible, terrible person. It's only Bernie Sanders. There's nobody else. And I guess the one person that he started harping on was Hillary Clinton, and how her politics are terrible. She's a terrible speaker, terrible this. I said, well, wait. You say what you like about her politics. She's not a terrible speaker. She's actually a very, very good speaker. She may not be the warmest person in the world, but hey, she knows how to convey ideas. She's very intelligent. Oh, he couldn't take that one. That was a bridge too far as he was concerned. He started challenging me with stuff and everything. My wife turns to him and says, "Okay, boys, let's calm down here." He says, "I can't talk to him." And he storms out of the room. Like, oh, okay. I look at Louise. Louise looks at me like, well, I did that? Well, apparently I did without realizing it. Apparently I set him off. I had no idea I was going to set him off.
And so that was the thing, yeah. You know, and we don't know, because especially if we gather occasionally, right? We actually don't know. We love the person, but do we know them? Do we know what's going on in their lives? If we haven't seen them for a year, then no. Or if we haven't seen them even for a month or a week, we don't know what sets them off, and we don't know what sets them off. What will activate a certain response. And so that's what you just kind of have to go, well, I didn't realize that would be, but we're all entitled to an opinion, and our opinions don't match right now. So let's talk about what does.
So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up looking for, okay, so how can I find a way to re-bridge the gap here?
Yes.
And later on, we're out to dinner, and I realized I had an opportunity, because I don't remember exactly how we got to the conversational point, but we were talking about food on television, and my nephew's very much into food. He's actually a very accomplished cook. He's never studied to be a chef. He easily could be. He's definitely skilled in that way, and very interested in alternative foods, alternative ways of putting things together. Very novel, very unique. So at one point in the conversation, we're talking about people presenting food on TV, and literally earlier that day, Louise and I had seen an old episode of Julia Child.
Oh my Lord! Amazing.
Doing her Julia Child thing. And it was a great episode, because at one point in the episode, what was it she was doing? She was making some sort of a pastry or something. I can't remember what it was. And she was talking about how the basic material had been in the freezer and is full of butter. And so you have to kind of break it up. And so you have to kind of beat it up a bit. She takes a stick and starts beating the thing on the counter. And then she pulls out a standard rolling pin. She says, and as for this isn't going to do you any good, so you might as well just throw it away. And she literally throws it into a trash can. And I'm telling this to my nephew, and my nephew just bursts out laughing. And from that point on, the whole conversation shifted to a much happier place.
Yes.
So fortunately, I found a way to bridge the gap again through something that's very important to him, food.
Yeah. And, I think, and that takes time, and it takes a desire to do that, because you were looking for a way to bridge the gap.
Yes.
And that makes a difference. Yeah. So it's and this is why we have friends, is to make up for family. So it's not always, but not always. I'm being flippant, but it is, the people that you are born into being with don't have to be your first choice of company. They really don't. We like to, it's one of the tropes of humanity that is, that is the case. And you can have my full permission to not love all your family members. You can have honor them, and they're part of your lineage, but it's not, blood ties are not a requirement to love someone, or loving someone.
I've been nodding my head the whole
yes,
time.
you know what I mean. It's like you have permission to choose not to go to the gathering. That is the other part, is that you can choose not to go. You have that sovereignty, and you can weigh up your responses and say, what are you going to do? Like, I will say my son is a bachelor, really very, and I can see his grandfather in him. He's very particular about how things are in his house, which means my grandchildren, age 3 and 5, have never crossed the threshold, because he just can't. He's not willing to have that kind of randomity in a space that he's created. So he goes to visit them, and after about 2 or 3 hours, he will stand up and go, I'm going home now. And we all know that it's just like he has reached his level of toddlerdom, and he's going to now go and decompress at home. And It is, we have to allow that. My daughter, it's not her favorite thing, because, she wishes that he would just sort of, I don't know, stay and play and, enjoy the kids, but it's not who he is. I grew up with a dad that never played with us. He wasn't really interested in us until we got to about 12 or 13, and we started having conversations. My dad was all about conversations. And so when we started making puns or having witty comments or laughing at the same kind of Oscar Wilde, clever scripting, that was when he got interested. And that was where he shared his love of words and crosswords and Scrabble and all this kind of thing. But the roughhousing in the garden never happened, ever. He just wasn't that kind of dad. My husband ended up being much the same kind of dad. And my son is that way with his niece and nephew. Come the time when they start being interested in gaming or model building or whatever it is, he's going to be there and so devoted. But in the meantime, he honors his way, and he honors that they are not they aren't at a stage where he wants to spend a lot of time with. And I love the permission that comes with that. In fact, it's been quite an eye-opener for me too, is to say, because I'm an old lady. I find 3-year-olds exhausting. This is why you have your kids when you're young. And I will say, I love you dearly, and I'm going to make sure that I visit for 3 or 4 hours, and then I'm going to come home. And that's it. And we have the best time, because
Which, by the way, is the best thing about being a grandmother, right? When you're a grandmother, you actually get to enjoy the children without having to deal with all the stuff that comes afterward.
Yes,
Okay, I get to go
absolutely.
home now.
Yes,
You
and
can
I
take
can
care
have a
of
full
this.
night's sleep. Yay! I know, right? It is, but I do want people to realize that you are entitled to enjoy your festivities in any way you please. Um, and yes, it'll take some navigation with the people who love you, but that's worth navigating, and it's worth choosing a response instead of the usual reaction. And you
Some of it
get,
has to do with navigating with yourself too. Like
yes.
as an example, I'll just point to myself and say I have a very strong feeling inside of myself that even though I often don't want to, I will always go with my wife to visit her family because I feel
Hmm.
like that I should be there.
Yes.
Even though there are times where I really don't want to be there.
Hmm.
But there's that part of me that says, yes, I really should be there.
I
And I can imagine that a time could come where, under a certain circumstance, not only do I not want to be there, it actually feels like a bad idea for me to be there. And when that time comes, I have to have, in some way, prepared myself so that I can break the pattern because
Hmm.
that pattern is pretty strong by this point,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
It,
Yeah.
it's
it
not a
has
small
to do with
fluctuation.
values, though. Like the reason why you go when part of you doesn't want to go is because you have a value around fill in the blank. You have a value
Correct.
around supporting your wife. You have a value around family. You have a value, right? So it's like whenever we have part of us disagreeing, or like we say, well, I really want to stay home, but I would feel guilty, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Then that guilt is showing you that you have a value attached to it. So what
Yeah.
is that value? And once we discover the value, oh, I really have a strong value around family and around being there for family, around showing up. It's like, well, either you let that inform your decision and you feel better about it. Because it's like, as much as there are parts of this that I don't like, I really do have a value around family and I want to be
Hmm.
the person that shows up. That will shift your energy and your perspective. And when your intention is different and your energy is different, you show up differently and people feel that. Like Walt, when your nephew stormed out because he just can't talk to you, right? But then you had an intention to connect, and that
Hmm.
Hmm.
energy can be felt, right? It can be felt by the other person. So there's either that value informs you of your decision and you decide, yeah, I am going to go. I have a value around family and around showing up. And as annoying as, Uncle Henry might be, I'm going to still show up. Or you say, I have a value around family and around connection. How else can I honor that value? Maybe I
Hmm.
won't go, but I'm going to send flowers, or I'm going to, what other thing can I do to honor the value that I have?
Yeah. And that's exactly what my son does. He honors family. He has a huge family value, right?
Right. Yeah.
So he
Who
does
shows
show up.
up?
He never doesn't show up, but there are parameters around how long he stays.
Yep.
And that's the piece that we navigated, and that's it is about the value. We are a family and we do hang out together, and he chooses a time and he'll say when he's leaving, and that's how it is, and it is I think we forget how important communication is. Communication, talking to people, talking to the people you love clearly, honestly, um, in response, can make all the difference. Because if I am far more comfortable these days saying to my daughter, I am really tired today, so I'm going to be going home a little earlier than we anticipated, which is so much better than arriving and thinking, oh my God, I am so tired, I wish I could just go home. And then there's that feeling throughout the visit, right? So
Right.
this is how we navigate and communicate our navigation. And so I think it's the same with just saying, if somebody brings up a topic and everybody's spine starts to straighten and the hackles start to come up, then you're going, okay, this is Christmas Day or this is a family gathering. Let's leave that conversation for the moment and try another one. And if you do happen to jump in with both feet, and somebody explodes, then you go and find something and say, look, I know you two don't agree on, or we don't agree on this particular thing, but we are family. Let's go and find something we do enjoy. And, I again, tapping it back in, I do care about you and I want to spend time with you.
There's also another piece of this too that occurs to me, and this is actual real world, because same family, my sister-in-law's side of the family, on those occasions where we go to visit them, and her sister-in-law's side of the family is also there. To be honest, I don't have anything in common with them. I have a hard time finding anything at all to talk about with them because our lives are just so different. And I kept quiet about that for the longest time until finally I said to Louise, I just don't really want to go to those. If it's going to be just, your immediate family, your brother, your sister-in-law, their kids and so forth, that's great. I just don't want to be there when her family is there just because there's nothing for me to talk about. It's boring. She said, boy, I'm so glad you said that. I feel the same way. We hadn't actually talked about it to that point. And from that point on, Louise actually makes it a point whenever we're talking to him. Well, we really just want to come visit with you guys. We don't want to get in the larger crowd. Can we arrange a time when we can be with you guys? So it actually, it paid off to bring up the subject.
Yeah. Communication will always pay off, even if it doesn't seem like right in the minute, because, you're being authentic. You're being you. And people will have their reactions and you can see what that is and then navigate accordingly. But hopefully they'll also pause and check in with the reason and the value that you're honoring by having the conversation. And it's such an interesting thing that our families are so much part of our lineage, but they don't always keep up with how we change. In other words, they see us as we've always been. I remember my mom coming to visit when I was, I got married so early and I'd had a home of my own for about 5 or 6 years before the kids arrived, and then the children came, and my mom would come and visit and she would automatically start doing the mom things. And I would say to her, Mom, this is my house. I'm in charge here, and she'd always just chuckle and go, yeah, it's a default. Sorry. But if I hadn't said,
yes,
I would have let that resentment fester. Right. And it would have been, yes, she just comes and takes over. And so it was much easier to just lightly and playfully say, hey, I am not your 12-year-old daughter anymore. You have to let me get on with my kids.
Oh my God, you grew up. What happened?
I know, right? But it is, and I find myself doing it the same thing. I'll go into my daughter's kitchen and I'll pick up a cloth and start wiping a counter, and I'm going, oh, sorry. It's not that I'm saying, hell, you don't clean your kitchen. It's so automatic that I'm in a kitchen and I wipe things down. And then I will talk to her about that, and she'll go, oh, thank God, because I was about to go, oh, she thinks I don't look after my house. It's that kind of thing. So communication will generally dissolve most things. And if they don't, at least you've got information that you can work from.
So true.
I think that most conversations aren't as difficult as we think they're going to be.
No, that's right. We prepave a lot of difficulty that we don't need to.
Yeah, like what you just said, Walt, is that Louise was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. I felt the same way. It's like you didn't expect that,
Not at all.
We don't expect it, but they usually work out a lot better than we think they will.
Mm-hmm.
That's good
and we can prepave that for sure. It's going to be better than expected.
Particularly for the things that we're afraid of, that we don't really want to address because we have this irrational fear that, oh God, that's going to work out so badly.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's just an opinion that your brain has formed for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can question it.
Well, hopefully we've been helpful to those who are dealing with the stresses and strains of the holiday season. But in the meantime, I want to wish all of you guys and your families the happiest of holidays, and want to wish the same thing to all of our listeners everywhere. And thank you very much for continuing to be listeners, and we're looking forward to doing it again in the new year. And with that, we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.